Hi everyone, my name is Janelle and you're watching Everyday Jane, where I make videos on homemade delicious food. That brings us to today's recipe, which is pumpkin sheet cake with chocolate chips inside, as well as a, listen for this, brown butter cream cheese frosting. I've been working on this frosting for a while. It is so good and I can't wait to share it with you. During this season, I'm all about the pumpkin stuff and I am not ashamed. So if you're not as well, grab a cup of coffee or tea and let's get started. So in this bowl, we already have 2 1/4 cups of all-purpose flour straight in the bowl, and we're gonna work on the rest of the dry ingredient. In here, we have our baking soda, 1 1/2 teaspoons, baking powder, 1 teaspoon, as well as 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And that's going right into the bowl. So we're adding some sugar into this bowl. We're going to be using a mix of white sugar as our sweetener, as well as some maple syrup. But we're going to add the maple syrup, of course, to the wet ingredients. So let's move on to our sugar. We're going to add 3/4 cups of sugar. So this is a 1/2 cup of sugar in, and then 1/2 of a half, just 3/4 cups. And next, we're going to move on to our spices. For this pumpkin cake, I'm going to use not pumpkin spice mix, but if that's all you have on hand, feel free to do so, but I'm gonna use some of my favorite warming spices. Of course, we're gonna start with cinnamon. I'm gonna use 3/4 of a teaspoon of cinnamon, as well as some ginger and allspice. I don't know if you ever heard of allspice before or used it, but I love it in baked goods. It is delicious. It's not a spice blend, it's actually it's a spice called allspice, and we're going to use that today. We're gonna start with the cinnamon. I'm gonna use 3/4 of a teaspoon of cinnamon. I really want this to be more lightly spiced instead of really strongly spiced. And 1/4 of a teaspoon of ginger, and 1/4 of a teaspoon of that yummy spice that I was telling you about, allspice. So we're just going to give our dry ingredients a good mix in here, and then we're gonna move on to our wet ingredients. So I'm back here with my medium bowl, and I'm going to make some buttermilk. I know that sounds a little bit weird, but this is just regular whole milk. And if you don't have buttermilk on hand, like most people don't, and this is just 1/2 cup, right? You don't wanna get a whole container of buttermilk just for 1/2 cup. You're going to wanna sour this milk. I'm going to just put a little bit of vinegar, about a tablespoon's worth, right into this milk. So I'm gonna put this in the microwave for just about 20-30 seconds, and I'll be right back. So after it went into the microwave, it's got these, like you can see what that looks like, right? And that's perfectly fine to use. We're absolutely going to benefit from the use of this buttermilk in our cake. It's gonna help with the leavening and make everything really nice and moist. Sorry for those of you who think that's a cringy word. So I'm going to use 2 eggs at room temperature. 2 eggs, and then we're going to add some maple syrup to this. So I'm gonna use 1/4 cup of maple syrup, 1/2 cup of olive oil. So use whatever sort of fat you'd like in this scenario as well. I love olive oil. I don't think it detracts from the flavor, but you can definitely use a neutral tasting oil. So this is just canned pumpkin, not pumpkin pie mix, just pureed, pure pumpkin. And this is 1.5 cups of pumpkin. So I'm gonna put that right in. Adding that buttermilk mixture here too. I'm just gonna grab a whisk and poke those yolks and get to whisking. So I'm gonna use the big bowl to combine, right? So I'm gonna put the wet ingredients in the big dry ingredient bowl, and then we're going to mix it, and then we're that much closer to baking. I'm gonna switch to a wooden spoon here. Just gonna make it a bit easier. Right before all of the flour is mixed in, so probably right around here, right? It's almost there. We're going to add our chocolate chips. I have some mini chocolate chips. They're really cute and mini. but I prefer to use these ones instead of the regular size chocolate chips, just because then you see little flakes of chocolate all the way through, or little specks of chocolate. And this is where I lose some people. People are like, pumpkin and chocolate. Trust me, it is so good. It's perfect. It's like that little bit of sweet and bitter with the chocolate, and then the spices and the pumpkin flavor. And we'll just mix this together until combined, and that will also mix in the rest of that flour. Make sure you get the bottom and the sides of that bowl there. So I'm back here, my oven is preheating at 350, and I've got my little baking dish. I've got a baking dish. And I put a sheet of baking paper right in there. So just to make sure that it's easy release, I always like to be safe. It's better than things sticking to the bottom of the pan. Trust me, I know. And we're gonna pour in our gorgeous little chocolate studded pumpkin batter. Like, this color is just so lovely. This batter is a little bit thick, so you'll wanna just take your time and even it out a bit. All right, doesn't have to be perfect because it'll level off a bit in the oven as well. Now we're gonna put this in the oven and I'll come back when it's out. All right, so we're back several hours later because that cake came out of the oven really perfectly, but it was obviously super hot, so it needs to cool completely before we can even think about icing. So it's continuing to cool right now. I actually chucked it in the fridge because I'm a little impatient. But let's start on this icing. Let me tell you, it is so good. We're gonna start with a base of brown butter. So it's a half a cup of brown butter, and let me walk you through how I did this. The butter goes into a saucepan and it cooks down until it's melted, and at that point you can lower the heat and just let it keep going. If you're new to brown butter, the lower the heat the better. Constant stirring, just until you see the bottom or the milk solids start to turn toasty, and then get a little golden, and then get a little brown, and then you want to make sure you take that off the heat right away. You don't want to over brown the butter or burn the butter, but you definitely want it to get toasty and beautifully caramelized. And this, let me tell you, is the best base for icing because it introduces some buttery, toasty flavors. And you know what it also does is it evaporates some of the liquid in this butter so that we can use less sugar. And I'm all about that when it comes to icing because it can get really sweet really fast. So here we are with our brown butter that is chilled in the fridge, and then I brought it back to room temperature. And to this bowl, I'm going to add 4 ounces of room temperature cream cheese because this is a brown butter cream cheese frosting. And now I'm gonna use a hand mixer and blend up the butter and the cream cheese. You always wanna wipe down the sides and then keep whipping. Take a look at this color right here. 1 teaspoon of vanilla. So I'm starting with 3/4 of a cup, and I'm gonna use my spatula to just give it a head start here so we don't have a cloud of sugar. I almost forgot, I like a pinch of salt as well. Big pinch. I'm gonna add another little bit. Scrape down. Oh, look at that. That's almost the exact consistency that we want. We're just missing another 1/4 cup of sugar here. Oh, so creamy. So excited. So here we are, my favorite part. We get to ice this sheet cake. You can definitely do this in a layer cake. This is actually the exact cake proportions. If you wanted to do a 6-inch 3-layer cake, you can absolutely do that. I tried that in one of my recipe tests, and a layer of ganache. It was pretty divine, but I decided to go with a sheet cake because it's just so easy to whip up. So let's get frosting. Make sure this cake is completely cooled. All right, so about half the frosting on one side, half the frosting on the other side. I use the back of my spatula. I wanna leave like a 1/2-inch border around the outside so you can kind of see that gorgeous pumpkin-y color. What we're gonna do is just use the back of the spoon to make some swirls, and this leaves it with such a beautiful rustic look. And just keep doing this until you're happy with the finish. And then you're good to go. Look how creamy this frosting is. I hope you can see that. It is so perfect for this cake. With the cream cheese and the toasty brown butter, couldn't get any more fall appropriate. All right, so now it's time for that taste test. Guys, this is so moist. I'm so excited. Please try this. This is gonna be faster than any pumpkin pie. But the payoff is just so huge. Wow, that's good. All right, that's enough for me because I just kind of wanna eat this. But thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you sticking around, especially if you made it to the end. Hopefully you'll try this out. Please, please, please do. And if you like it, comment down below, subscribe and like for more videos, and I hope to see you soon. Thanks, bye.